Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, good people. Welcome back to another exciting episode. You can laugh later. Of another exciting series of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. Now, listen, I had to hype myself up because I'm still in mourning after losing my mom, my sister's on the show today. And she died from complications due to Alzheimer's disease. And so today, my sister's in the studio again, and we're talking about just this whole Alzheimer's journey with mom, how we navigated it. I'll talk with people who are doing community work, particularly amongst the Black community, to understand why this ugly disease is hitting us harder than any other disease or any other community. And so just want to roll this out because it's a big thing. And when we came into this space, we didn't know much about it. And so I'm going to also put a link in here into a piece I wrote about when we discovered that mom had Alzheimer's. I called it Alzheimer's is a Bitch because it is. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about that. So Lilada, welcome back.
Good to be back.
Did I scare you when I came on with that level of energy?
Yeah, because it was such a transition from the energy you had before you said that. I just wasn't expecting all that, So I said, now I got to pick up my energy.
No. That was just
Hey,
no,
good
people. It was funny to see your face the way you jumped.
Yeah.
And Jeremy, our engineer, he didn't quite look as frightened as you did, but he certainly looked.
Eli did.
He did it really. Jeremy looked kind of,
Eli.
Yeah, I think I cleared his sinuses.
Yeah.
So, Lilada, we're here, and, first of all, let me just say, I appreciate our podcast listeners, and what I believe you get here that you don't get in other places is not just Black frankness and Black genius and Black excellence, but you also get Black transparency. Because when you have a podcast, we're not coming on talking about other people's business, and we're not having people come. We could now. Monique is looking for another spot to step in on, and we're not giving space for other people to come and talk about other folks. But like in this segment, we're really talking about ourselves and our pain, and that's really a responsibility for folks who are looking at podcasting as a way of informing and inspiring people and not just entertaining. And so I appreciate people for being our Patreon supporters, for being our regular listeners, for those of you who have written comments, will write comments, who have shared, will share, because we want this to really impact life. And so it takes a lot just to come and share our lives and to share this journey with our mom. So our mom passed from complications from Alzheimer's disease on January 1st. So she kicked in the door. She got in 2024, which we appreciate. But she was diagnosed around 2010 when she was 70 years old. And so she's wrestled hard with it. And she wrestled hard with it for 14 years. It's still hard for me to talk about her in the past tense. But one of the things that Lilada and I, and those of you who may be newer, Lilada is also a podcast host of Defending Black Girlhood. And so she holds her own on her microphone in her studio as well. And hopefully, we'll be able to, use this together, for inside yours. But we didn't want to insult mom by pitying her. So we made a decision to laugh loudly, and laugh often. And that piece is really interesting. And so I just want to ask you before I get in. I have a question about. Do you have a humorous story about maybe an interaction with mom? How are you doing today? Talking about all of this just a few weeks after mom's memorial service.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you said. It's still trying to believe that this is a reality.
Right.
But it helps to talk about it. It helps to spend time with people who loved her.
Yes.
I think one thing that kind of helped keep our head above water was playing her memorial service because it just gave us something to reach toward
Yes.
and something, a shared vision, a shared project to do that kind of kept the energy up high.
Sure.
And so I think the challenge is, what's the next iteration of celebrating her life?
Right. And what are things that we can do, right, to just to commemorate it. And so,
Right.
you and I working together on the Center for Black Excellence, our campaign team has made a decision to not only do a tribute for her, which I think we mentioned a few weeks ago, but we're actually naming the entire center after Mom. So it will be called, the whole space will be called the Verlene G. Senior Center within the Center for Black Excellence and Culture. And we have a campaign out there for $500,000 to raise this so that we'll have something else to focus on to keep her legacy alive, because we made a decision not to hide Mom away. A lot of people who suffer from dementia are sort of tucked away. You don't see them anymore. And you may see them out in public and you think, oh, I didn't know they were still alive.
Right.
And so we made a decision, which we'll get into, about bringing her out into the open. And I want to make sure that this senior space is not just for Alzheimer's treatment, but just for Black seniors who have so much living to do and so much wisdom to share, to have a place to go, to look forward to going someplace that's beautiful and state of the art and it's busy and it's intergenerational, to go and interact. And so that'll give us something to focus on. We'll drop that link in as well, because we just know that there are people who want to do something worthwhile, and supporting this could be very helpful.
Absolutely.
So, Lilada, do you have a humorous Alzheimer's related story concerning our mom that you feel free to share?
Yes, I do. I thought you would ask me a Black icebreaker. Like, how come I don't never get the Black icebreaker questions?
Really?
You never ask me about my grits.
Oh my, Lilada, grits or cream of wheat?
Grits.
Butter and sugar on your grits, or butter and salt?
I've actually almost got into physical fights about this, butter and sugar.
I know that. What's wrong with people?
I don't know.
With all that's going on in the world, why the hell would people put salt on grits? Unless you're putting shrimp in it and stuff. And
that's fine. If it's savory grits, go all the way.
But for breakfast.
But for breakfast, it is butter that floats.
Come on.
It's got to be enough butter that you can see the butter. You can see the yellow.
Butter floats.
In the white grits.
Come on. Now, do you put other stuff over in it? Like, do you put your scrambled eggs over in it?
I used to as a kid. Now I just get them on at the fork at the same time.
but it doesn't need to be cohabitating. They
Right.
can just live right next door to each other.
Exactly. It's funny. I was at a meeting this weekend with a whole bunch of Black folks, and they had grits. And I said, okay, who's on Team Sugar?
Oh, my goodness. Yes.
So it's funny. So that's good. That's good enough. Okay, so we'll go into the question.
No, hold
I
on.
just want my Black icebreakers like everybody else gets.
'Cause I didn't realize I never asked you those questions. And
I don't think so.
Okay. Lilada, I didn't realize that I haven't invited you into the Black Icebreakers. And so, because usually when you come on the air, we're either putting out fires or you're starting one. So let me ask you a couple of questions. Do you know what a pocketbook is?
Oh, yes.
What's a pocketbook?
It's a women's wallet.
So it's not a book that you put in your pocket?
It's not a book that you put in your pocket. No, where you put your money.
It's where you put your money. Okay, all right. Let's see. When you were growing up, could you have company or guests at home when your parents weren't home?
No. Could halfway have them when they were.
Did you ever have family, pretend family, living with you while you were growing up?
Oh, yes.
I won't go into that. Can you play the dozens?
Yes.
What are the dozens? What is the dozens?
It's a game when you talk about people's mama in the most derogatory way possible.
In order to break their spirits?
Yes.
Can you swim?
Actually, I can. I'm not going to join a swim team, but actually, I can swim.
Okay. Sweet potato pie or pumpkin pie?
Sweet potato pie.
Mayonnaise or Miracle Whip?
Mayonnaise.
Tabasco or Frank's?
It doesn't matter to me.
It really doesn't?
No.
Oh, okay. Let me see.
My son would have a fit of me saying that because he is committed 100% to Frank's, but I don't care either one.
When you were a kid in gym class, did you ever skip in elementary school because your knees were ashy?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think so, but I probably wanted to.
And what does that mean? As she needs.
It means your skin is gray looking because you're in need of Vaseline, lotion, or some shea butter.
or some shea butter. Oh my goodness. Last question. Do you remember when, if an older woman saw a younger girl, particularly 11 or 12, holding a young baby on her hips, so it's just sort of standing on the side of the baby on her hip, they would say what to that? What would they say to the young girl?
They would say, get that baby off your hips. They would call it fast.
Yeah, they would call. So she could hold the baby.
She could hold the baby.
She could throw the baby in the air.
Yep.
She could lay the baby on the ground on the baby's back. She could change the baby's diaper. She could swing the baby. Mm-hmm. But if that young girl stood like this and to the side and had that baby on her hip, she was told immediately, get that baby off your hip.
Yeah.
So why do you think that was? What was Big Mama trying to tell Lil Mama?
That's a really good question. I don't know if it seemed like the girl was acting as if that was her own baby, and maybe that's why they thought she seemed fast, or what it was about the hip and the baby sitting on the hip. I don't know.
Now, you said she looked fast. Mm-hmm. That's not a word that's used when they say she fast. Like, that would be like one of the most derogatory things you could say about a young girl like you fast. What does fast mean in the black world?
It basically means
Wait, hold on. Jeremy, is the word fast used amongst white people?
No.
So do you have any idea? Do you know what fast means?
I could guess.
Yes.
So, Lilada, what does fast mean?
It don't take long to get something. That's what fast means.
Oh, so it means quick, to the point.
Yep, to the point. Promiscuous.
To the point. Promiscuous.
Yes.
And I think that maybe the older people were afraid that young girl was looking so comfortable holding a baby that she might go out to get one. Now, again, those are just girls that were just trying to help out with the babies. I mean,
the babies were heavy.
Those babies were heavy.
Them big heads.
Said to put them on your hip.
Right.
But the older people, I don't know if people say that anymore, because I guess moms are so young now that the babies are on their hips. Like, it's your own baby. It's like, but Big Mama, it is my baby. Yeah. But okay, Lilada, I had that. Okay, no, that's good. So I'm glad. Welcome to Black Icebreakers.
Thank you.
You have arrived. Tell me about your humor story about Alzheimer's and your mama.
I think one of the funniest stories, just in general, that prior to having Alzheimer's, my mom didn't cuss. Mm-hmm. And as many people know who are dealing with folks who have dementia or Alzheimer's, that is one of the things that they do. I don't know why. I guess they lose some inhibition and it shows up in their tongue. And so my mom started calling people bitches. But not just a bitch, but she would have some kind of adjective that went with it. That I have to say was quite appropriate. Like, for instance, there was this one lady who worked with her at the center who was heavyset. Mm. And she called her a hungry looking bitch. But it didn't go just to workers. Me and my daughter took her out one time. And I think we kept her out too long because she got tired. And
you got it.
Yeah, we were out like 5 hours.
You got to get in before sundown.
Yes. And we was getting on her nerves, and she was starting to just fuss and everything. And I had on a fur coat. Mm-hmm. And she called me a bear-looking bitch. And, I'll give it to her. I probably was looking a little bit like a bear in that fur coat. Yeah, she called me a bear-looking bitch.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, Mom, you know what? I can remember trying to get her to eat one day. This is when she was living in a facility. And I said, Mom, I need you to eat this. And she told me, whatever it was I was trying to get her to eat, that she was going to take it and shove it up my ass.
Oh!
And I said, Mom, not only am I your son, I'm your pastor. You can't say that to me. She looked at me like, all right, next subject.
Right. I've said what I said.
Oh, my goodness. I'm going to throw one in because I've got two, so I'm going to give you a chance to think about it a second. I'll do my first. So in 2011, we noticed some things were going on differently with Mom, and we'll get into some of the nuts and bolts of it. But Mom left some oil on the stove and set the house on fire. Mm-hmm. And I kept seeing a call from an odd number. I don't typically answer them. After about the third ring, I did. And she said, Alex, it's me, Mom. And it wasn't a number from her home, so I'm just trying to figure out where's Mom that she's calling me. Again, she's got Alzheimer's. She's been diagnosed, but she remembers my number. Mm-hmm. We know that's not just about memory, but she called me from a neighbor's home. They knew her, so they let her in. And she said, the house is on fire. I said, wait.
Right.
Mom, wait, where are you? Whose house? What? She goes, the house is on fire. So I jumped in my car. I called you. I drove there. By the time I couldn't get to the house, with my car, I had to run, a block away. My head was throbbing. I felt like I was about to have a stroke or something. It was crazy. And when I got to her, she was fine. She didn't have any smoke inhalation, but she said, when I went to the bathroom and I left the stove on and I had the grease on it and I was trying to put it out. And I thought, Alex is going to get me if I get killed in this house trying to put this fire.
Mm-hmm.
So I put my coat on and I went outside to the neighbors to call you.
Wow.
That in a moment of fighting the fire, she said,
Man.
you know what, if I die up in here, Alex is going to get me.
Right.
And I would have.
Yeah.
And so, oh my goodness, that was hilarious.
Okay, I have another one.
Go ahead.
One time, Alexandra, my daughter, and I went to go see Mom at home. Mm-hmm. And the front door was unlocked or open, and we didn't see her anywhere.
Oh.
And, we're terrified at this point because I'm
Right.
thinking, man, we're going to find her dead. Just immediately your mind goes to the worst case possible scenario. And so we couldn't find her. I'm calling you. Have you seen her? Did you pick her up? Don't know where the heck she is. I don't know what led me in this direction, but there's a house behind her house that we end up going there and say, I think we were just asking people, have you seen her? Because I thought she was maybe just walking around.
Sure.
And we pull up over there, and there my mom is sitting down with these neighbors, drinking beer, playing the dozens with them.
Yes.
Getting ready to have some fried chicken. And she did not know these people. They didn't know her. But then I asked them, how did she get over there?
Yes.
And they said she climbed the fence. At this point, she's 71, 72.
Oh,
She climbed the fence
to go visit
these people.
And she's drinking beer. Mom was not a beer
She doesn't
drinker.
drink. She wasn't a drinker.
She wasn't a drinker. She's playing the dozens. She could play the dozens good.
Yeah.
We get our quick wit and our sharp
yeah.
tongues from her. But they were just sitting down because we heard people laughing.
Yeah.
She was just, they didn't know where she came from. They're like, hey,
come on.
Mama, you want a beer?
Right.
And then she's sitting down playing dozens with them. Probably, and she probably was calling them beer guzzling bitches. Since she was on that tip.
Right.
Oh, my last one later before we get into some of the other discussions was Mama called us when she would leave. She knew how to drive to short distances, a place to have lunch. She knew how to drive to church. She could drive to my house. But she would always call me. This one night she didn't call. So after a while, I went home. I drove to her home and didn't see her car. So that terrified me. Again, one of those moments like, where'd my mother go? Call the police, call the hospitals. Nothing turned up. But I got a call the next morning from Janesville police. That still frightened me. They said, Janesville police. They said, we have your mother. She's fine. But she ran out of gas. And so she's at a car dealership. And you can meet her there. So I called you. We drove down to Janesville. Now, her car had been filled with gas because Dwayne, one of the friends of our family, filled her car up like 2 days before that. We don't know where Mom went. So she left our house. Instead of going north towards the Beltline, north towards home, she got on the highway and ended up going south on 14 and getting down to Janesville. We don't know if Mom went to Rockford and turned around. We don't know if Mom went to Chicago and turned around because Janesville's only 30 minutes away. There's no way she should have been out of gas. And when we showed up, she was sitting there with coffee and donuts.
Right.
Because the owner said when he got to work that morning at like 7, she was sitting there and asked, Could she get a cup of oil? Because she's gonna put in her carburetor. Could I get some oil? And he purposely didn't give her any gas so that she wouldn't drive off and call the police so that they would notify family. But she was sitting there like with her ankles crossed with coffee and donuts, and she looked at us like, "What the hell? What the hell y'all doing here?
Right.
Like, this is my gig. What are you
Right.
what are you doing here?" That was frightening, but it just made us laugh because we realized, okay, even with dementia, old girl's gonna take care of herself.
Right.
And there's something about her that makes other people, whether it's the neighbors in the back giving her a beer or the neighbor in Janesville, and a lot of stuff happens in Janesville,
Right.
She grew up, when we were growing up, she would shop there a lot, but there's like some active KKK stuff. And
Right.
like, that's not where I necessarily want sorry to Janesville listeners, but that's not necessarily where I want my mom to be at 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
What she did, I don't know. Where she slept, I don't
Right.
know. But the owner of this dealership gave her coffee and donuts, called the police, knew something was off.
Right.
And kept her there and kept her safe.
Yeah.
So those are memories and
Yes.
things that just helped us have 10 more years because we knew she was resilient. In that point, we hated the disease, but we couldn't feel sorry for her because we knew she was a survivor. And
Right.
someone who has that type of faculties like that, you can't just let that go. So
Right.
part of what we want to do later is just talk with people who have no one to talk to when they start having suspicions of these things. So really, you were the first to broach the subject of mom's memory and cognition. I think it was after a trip or something where you just noticed she struggled with knowing which sign to take. Do you take, when you come into Madison from 94, do you take the Wisconsin Dells sign? Do you take the Madison sign, the Janesville sign? And I think it shocked you that she didn't know which way to go because that's a route she traveled for 50 years.
Right. Right. And then there were some other things where I was noting she wasn't having linear thinking. Mm-hmm. Just her being such a brilliant person, I just was noticing, like, okay, Mom, that don't make sense. How you saying that or how you're looking at this situation.
Right. Because people think it's just memory. She didn't start off by forgetting. Like, it wasn't about forgetting stuff or even repeating the same things. I remember there being a period of time, but I would say as a whole, repeating the same thing over and over is not what I experienced a lot from Mom.
No, not starting off. Some of the first things was that she started losing the ability to navigate around the city.
And she's a good navigator.
Yeah, even just around the city. Like one time she was taking, Christian or Alexandra to go get a haircut that was on the west side, and we lived on the west side. But she went all the way east and then came back.
She got there, but she took a different way that was there.
Yeah, that was just really out of the way. So I started noticing things like that. And I'm like, this isn't Mom.
Right. And again, and we're saying this to people so that when you start noticing things, you need to notice them. Mom had impeccable sense of direction. So we were driving to Milwaukee to catch a flight to New York. And it was the summer. We're driving due east. This morning, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. The sun's dead in our face. And the GPS is saying east. And Mom is saying, this isn't going east. I said, Mom, it's 6 a.m. The sun's right in front of us. You taught me that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. She said, I don't care what I said. That we're not driving east. And nothing could convince her that was east. And even on the GPS, you could see Lake Michigan. I said, Mom, look, if we keep on this, it goes right to Lake Michigan. She's like, we're not going east. So you're right. It was some of the linear thinking and some of those things that, because she wasn't forgetting stuff, she knew our name, she could still drive and get around. You spent more time with Mom day to day in those during those days than I did. So I didn't notice them very much. But because I didn't understand what Alzheimer's was and she wasn't, forgetting herself or repeating things, it was hard for me to think that that's what it was. And it was also hard for me just to wrestle with the fact that a woman so brilliant, of all the diseases you can get, she would get something that would impair her brain. The irony of that. And so...
And I don't know that I thought it was Alzheimer's. I just knew something was wrong.
I thought you thought it was Alzheimer's.
I just knew something was really wrong. I don't know that Alzheimer's was at the top of my brain. Like, this is what it is. Yeah.
We somehow we convinced her to go take a test, and it's not invasive. So those of you that have loved ones, I just assumed everything's done with a blood test, urine test, spinal tap. The Alzheimer's test it's a written test,
Right.
It's almost like an aptitude test. And okay, so this is full. Do I tell this later or do I not say it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in our family, we have a sick sense of humor. You might have noticed. We laugh when we're nervous or afraid. We cry when we're mad. We're silent when we're really, really mad. But they asked Mom to draw a number of things to answer questions. And again, Mom is functioning, dressing herself, driving to church on Sunday, cooking. But they had her like, okay, the instructions said, draw on the clock that it's 2:30. So she's reading the instructions, but she drew 3 hands on the clock. And then she drew a house that was like hideous. It was like something from Lidsville. You got to Google it. If you're not, I'm too old to. And so the psychologist is in the room. We're sitting there. It's very quiet, very tense. She draws this clock with 3 hands. And I know it's not true, but like one of the hands looked like it was like a Mickey Mouse hand, like that little fat glove. And then she looked at me, she looked at us, and she said, and she started laughing.
Oh, my God.
You and I started laughing uncontrollably. We were laughing and crying because we didn't know what that meant, but we knew that it wasn't good.
Right.
But she laughed at it. But the drawings, like, I was like, Mom, stop playing. Like,
right. You can do this, Mom.
Mom, you can do it. Mom, come on. We're up in here with some white psychology. Like, this is not the time to play. Mom, damn it, draw.
Right.
Put that clock right. But I think because she looked at us and laughed like, that's all I got. The psychologist looked at us like he was going to put us all somewhere.
Right.
Like, he looked horrified that we were making fun of her, and we weren't. She started to laughing.
Right.
But he has such an incredulous look on his face, like, how dare you laugh at this woman?
Right. This is not funny.
This is not funny. And like we're wiping our eyes and stuff because we can't stop. Because again, we've been bottling this up. We know that this is going someplace. And I think the laughing kept us from crying. But at that point, crying probably would have been a little bit better. I think they would have known how to deal with us if we started crying.
Right.
But all 3 of us started laughing. That moment, I guess you had to be there because it's not as funny now as it was then. But
it was hilarious.
It was just hilarious. But the way she looked, she kind of had like that sheepish look, like what y'all think?
Right.
like, can y'all do any better? And that was sort of the beginning of the diagnosis. But even in that process, it was strange. So they made an appointment for her to see a counselor because it comes with a lot of fear and depression and stuff. But they were getting frustrated because they would call and say, yes, Alexander, I've really missed another appointment. And Counselor Flora is really busy. And if this happens again, I said, you all understand that my mother has been diagnosed with dementia.
Right.
And she has dementia, right? Like
right.
Do you have 100% attendance with attendance? Like, with Alzheimer's patients, like, and I guess maybe looking back that maybe they wanted us to bring her. I guess I hadn't thought about that because
I just thought about that too.
Yeah, it's like but she was still driving herself places because she was still fairly functional. But I will say that as we move through this, we had discussions about it. So some of the things that we did that I talked to friends about when they asked me, like, what were some of the early things that you did? We got Mom on some of the meds. Like, there's no cure for Alzheimer's. They're working on it. There's no cure. But they did put Mom on 2 meds. Mm-hmm. One helped to slow down the progress of it, and the other helped you to be more lucid so that she just wasn't out of it. One was Namenda, and I don't know if that's the generic name or not. The other was Aricept. But I think that those helped a lot. I didn't want to give her the second med, but I called a friend of a friend who was a geriatric psychiatrist and said if it were my mom, in fact, I was wondering why they didn't do this sooner. And we did notice that it helped. So I do want to say to people, don't just ignore this stuff. Look into it. Do the testing. But because we got Mom on meds, because after that test, they did tell us that the lifespan was 10 years. I was shocked because I didn't know that people die from Alzheimer's because I was still thinking it was a memory disease.
Exactly.
He said the lifespan is 10 years. I was thinking, like what does your memory do in 10 years that you just die?
Right.
But sometimes you forget to breathe. Your brain doesn't send signals on how to swallow or triggering your hunger. And Mom was with us for 14 years after that. But I just want to say to folks that if you look the other way, because your parents or your loved ones will get agitated. Mom did not want to be thought of that way because she associated that with intelligence. And she would say things that made sense like, well, I do a lot of reading and I carry a lot of information in my head. I can't remember everything. And so I guess the importance of I don't remember. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. All right, you got me on that one, Mama. Now in our 9th season, our award-winning podcast has a reach throughout the United States of America and over 80 countries around the world. Just want to give a quick shout out to my dedicated team of people who are helping me to change the conversations around race. Now, when you support Black Like Me podcast, you are supporting the work that they are doing to help me in creating better quality content, better marketing strategies, bigger and better production, a better interactive experience, but more importantly, a better society through the impact and the work of people who listen to this podcast. You can just click the link below to see the various levels of support that we offer and decide what works for you. Now, those of you who become patrons of this podcast, you'll have access to exclusive content like extended interviews, bonus rants, video chats with me. You'll also have a chance to join conversations with me via Zoom with other people around the country about the subject of race. To become a patron, again, all you've got to do is click the link below and you can support these important conversations and the work that this podcast is doing. I want to thank you in advance.
Right, because I was the black sheep.
Because you kept pushing that something was wrong.
Right. And I remember the lunch that we had to talk to Mom about it. And, of course, both of y'all kind of rejected, which, I get it.
I know I did.
Rejected it.
We're at Jade Gardens on Park Street.
Yes. And rejected the idea that anything was wrong.
Because you noticed that she was not herself. Mm-hmm. I was noticing that she could still dress, cook, drive herself around.
Do the big things.
And, but I would say looking back, we still moved quickly because you kept pushing. Something's not right. We got to get her into a doctor. I didn't necessarily want to do that, but I thought she's got insurance. She's working. Let's do this. Mm-hmm. So I would just say to folks, don't put your head in the sand because it's not helping your loved one. Mm-hmm. And that those early stages, those early days are really helpful and really, really important. Lilada, I'm thinking about some of the key observations over the stages of this. Mm-hmm. The diagnosis, the geographical confusion, the mood changes, the fire, of course, dressing oddly. Because Mom's always been an impeccable dresser, she just became frumpy. Mm-hmm. And just wearing layers of stuff.
Right.
And remember, lots of bracelets. And she kind of looked like a middle-aged black Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah.
We are the world.
That's a great description with all the layers, patterns that didn't go together, colors that didn't match.
It's like, Mama.
Right. Are you okay?
And she wasn't. But we sat noticing that stuff. We just thought, okay, maybe that's what you do when you turn 70. Some of the personal routines. One of the hard ones that I remember is taking her car keys.
Oh, man.
Because to me, that was such a sign of independence. I just felt like a horrible son. But I remember saying, looking out the window and just saying, "Where's my car?" So, because I didn't want to lie to her. So I said, "Mom, let me look into that. It's not out there. Let me do some asking around. Let me do some checking. Let me check with the neighbors." Then she kind of had this look like, USOB, you know where my car is. Like,
and you did.
She looked, and I did. She kind of looked at me like, you. Okay.
I took her to the driving test.
Oh, I forgot. Tell me about that. I forgot about that.
So part of it was written, and then the other part.
Because of the diagnosis, they want you to go take a driving test to make sure you can still be. Okay.
Yeah. And the other part was she had to get behind the wheel with someone from the clinic to drive them.
Oh, okay.
And it was real clear that she just wasn't safe driving anymore. Wow. But she didn't see that. So having to explain to her that we had to take her car away, was
hard.
It was really hard. It was really hard.
And later, since we're just out here being transparent, I dreaded that. But it wasn't like she went to the DMV and got a test, and then I took her keys the next day. Mm-hmm. She took that test before going to Janesville, right? Like before she drove to the ends of the world and back. Because I remember the nurse saying, you know she's not supposed to be driving. Like the nurse got pissed at me.
Man.
So it's not like we got the test and it's like, okay, Mom, I got to take your keys. I still let Mom drive. Because remember, Mom got in a car accident with Alexandra, your daughter.
Yeah.
She sideswiped a car. It's like, okay, get your head out the sand and other places, dude. Like this, she can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
I kept
I
thinking.
remember wrestling about that. Yeah.
That was, like physical wrestling?
No, just you and I wrestling with that issue
Right.
of her not driving anymore.
Right, because you kept pushing that and, oh, Lord. I also just want to say, siblings don't always come together on subjects like this. And I'm just saying, if you got a good friend, maid, partner, spouse, anyone, that cousin who can step in and help, I wouldn't have been any good on my own because I think I would have kept trying to find another way around it. So I don't know if I knew anyone who was still functional and had Alzheimer's.
Right.
But you were looking at, and again, you kept talking about linear thinking. I was like, what does she mean linear? Because I thought, okay, so then we had her tested. Like, did she have a stroke? Like, it was still hard to think that this might be that. But I think after. It's interesting how it worked in her. I don't know if this is how it works with everyone at Alzheimer's, but after a while with Alzheimer's, she sort of adjusted and she stopped asking about her car. But she would drive almost every day because she would drive herself to lunch. So she would ask for like a week or so, where's my car? And then I just noticed she didn't ask anymore. And I thought it was hard being asked where her car was.
Yeah.
It was harder not being asked.
Yeah.
Because it's like, did she just forget?
Right.
Is she tired of asking? What happened that she just didn't ask about? And then after like a month, it wasn't even a thing. It's not like she ever drove. Except when she started going to a day program at Catholic Charities and the driver of the senior van got out to go get someone and they didn't think that it was a good idea to turn the car off. They call me, yes, Alex, yes, this is so-and-so Acme van service. Verlene's in the driver's seat and won't get out. You're like, well, why the hell would you get out and leave the car running?
Right.
Like she wants to take her friends. And maybe she was going to Ho Chunk. She was going to take her friends someplace. But she's like, look, we out here. We don't have a captain.
Right.
I'm going to sign up for it.
Oh, my God.
She went and got in the car and was ready to drive those people to Ho Chunk, to lunch, to Glory. She was about to talk about the blind leading the blind.
Okay.
So maybe she did want to drive. She just thought about not bringing that up
My goodness.
anymore. I think the hardest part for me was moving her. But because we did it together, it wasn't like just dumping her someplace.
Right.
You and I went to a couple of places that some of them were just really horrible. It's a shame that people work their entire lives making their families, their communities, society, this nation great. And then what they feed them and where they put them is horrible. They don't pay people in these places well. They don't treat them well. We were fortunate to find a place that for a number of years was a good place for Mom. But when she walked in, you remember this? She started dancing.
Right.
When she walked in the first place, she started like snapping her fingers and started dancing. And I said, this might be the place. Because it was clean. It had a good smell.
Yeah.
And it had a lot of turnover after a while. But that was a great place to transition. There, her services were trying to put her someplace else. We're like, nope.
Right.
I kept saying, no, I saw a dirty Q-tip on that floor, and somebody should have saw it. They knew we were coming.
Right.
Somebody should have walked the premises. But if y'all don't care about dirty Q-tips, then you don't care about older people. I'm not bringing my mother down there.
Right.
Find someplace else.
Right. Put your mama there.
Put your mama. You want to play a dozen? Put your mama there.
Right.
Or you go there.
Yeah. I mean, I remember though with making the decision to place her. It was, I think, late summer. And this was after she had climbed the fence.
Yes.
To go over to the neighbor's house. And the bottom line was, I said, Alex, if Mom goes out roaming in the winter or at night, we won't forgive ourselves. We won't forgive ourselves.
Because there were silver alerts of older people wandering and dying and freezing. Yeah, you're right.
I said, we won't forgive ourselves. This is a decision that we need to make this year.
You're right, Lilada.
Yeah.
You're right. You know, I was thinking about this as we begin to wrap up a bit.
Can I just say right quick?
Yeah,
though?
yeah, please.
And surprisingly, and this is not going to be true for everyone, but she transitioned well. She really got with the program, and I think one thing that was really helpful was that someone was there 24 hours.
Structure.
There was structure, there was social engagement, and I think, there was a lot that kind of just helped probably fill in those spaces where if she's at home by herself and isn't knowing what's going on, how scary that must have been.
Right. And so I think sometimes people feel by not putting their families in care facilities, but leaving them home all day by themselves in front of a TV.
Right.
That might be the best some people can do. So there's no judgment with that.
Right.
But, we worked with a program called My Choice, which is, it was Care Wisconsin, then changed to My Choice. But they gave us good care.
They did, and they helped us keep her in the home as long as we could.
They gave us services. They gave money so that we could hire family members or friends to care for mom, like up to 12 hours a week. Like it was extremely, they could do meals or clean. Those people became friends for mom, but then it was hard to stay on top of her meds. And so they helped us find a place. And so, this podcast episode is not sponsored by, My Choice or Care Wisconsin.
Right.
Maybe it should be. But they did, no. I'm paying them back for what they did for
It was
for
wonderful
mom.
service.
It was
they
just
gave.
wonderful
Yeah.
service. And so, but what I love that we did, Lilada, is that we faced the truth. You helped me because it was scary. Because in all the ways I imagined when we might lose mom, none of them was to dementia.
No,
I
that
was
never.
I was worried about a car
Came in my
accident
mind,
or
right.
something else, an aneurysm, but not that.
No.
But we made a decision. We made decisions to make memories and to laugh and to get mom out of there and do outings. Because you and I just said we're gonna have the rest of our lives to mourn, and we will do that.
Yeah.
But during the time we would laugh,
Right.
and we did. Like we would take mom. I took mom down to concerts on the square. It's a downtown free concert. 30,000, 40,000 people show up for 6 weeks in Madison at the Capitol. Chamber orchestra music is beautiful. But one of my friends came walking by. He was the director of the chamber orchestra, Mark Cantrell. Mark, if you're listening. And mom saw him. He's like a middle-aged white guy. And mom said, I like the way he walked.
Oh, and she meant that.
She meant that.
She
Or
meant
she would
that.
do cat calls.
Yeah.
To guys. And so I remember once we were on Facebook Live saying, hey, I'm trying to get my mom to slow down. My mom ain't got no business being no black cougar. And you're like, I think she should do it. Say, okay, people, thumbs up, thumbs down. We had this whole poll going on live stream while mom is sitting there and people put, Alex, leave your mom alone. Let her get something if she wants it. But I think it did people's heart good to see that we were at concerts on the square. We were at farmers market. We tried to do restaurants as long as we could. Like we would kind of put her on the inside.
My God.
So she wouldn't get wander around. Because if she heard a baby crying, she didn't care whose baby that was.
Right.
She was going to get her baby, your baby, they baby. She didn't care
Right.
the ethnicity, the age. If a baby was crying, that mother, grandmother, and social worker came out in her. But we made decisions to laugh and do outings.
Can I just jump into?
Yeah.
I think also it's just the two of us that were her children. And so we also made a decision to work together, to make
Yes,
decisions
yes,
together.
Yes.
You were her power of attorney. You can only have, I think, only one person. But even though you had the legal right to make decisions, we still made decisions together. And
Right.
so what I would really encourage any family that is dealing with this, with a loved one, is find ways that you can agree and work in concert, because you don't need confusion around the confusion.
No, that's really true. That's very true. And I will say, if you are noticing that your parents, your loved ones, your older relatives are not acting like themselves, to the best of your ability, get medical power of attorney as soon as you can. And I have good friends who are taking care of their parents who said it's difficult when they're incapacitated. So I did that early. And mom signed off and she said, I trust you. You can do this. Because she knew stuff was going on. That made it so much easier to make decisions about her care.
Yeah.
And so I want to encourage people to really do that. And then what I'm going to do soon, Lilada, I really appreciate you co-hosting this time, but I'm going to have people on from the Alzheimer's Research Center from the University of Wisconsin, because as a result of this, I'm in the study. I joined up to be in the study. It's not a study to say whether or not you have it. Like don't talk to me about that stuff now. But what they're doing is they're catching biomarkers. They're testing my blood and other kinds of things so they can measure progress. And by participating in studies, if experimental drugs become available, those participating in studies have an easier or primary access to them. But because we want them to understand how this is working in the Black community, somebody Black has got to get involved. And for the sake of Mom. So Lilada, I know you got to step out the studio. I'm just going to say a few other things, but thank you so much for being here on the show. Any last things you want to say before you leave? You added a lot with your stories and your insight. Anything else you want to add before you have to step away from the studio?
No, I just think we've said a lot, but I think that if anything, I would just underscore, work together as a family.
Right. All right. Thank you so much, Lilada. It's helpful to talk through this together.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Boy, that was both sobering, but also uplifting, because you can't bury your head in the sand when things like this, when they're going on. So again, what's really changed for us is, while Mom was in the throes of it, Lilada and I both enrolled in the study. My wife did. A colleague of ours, friend of ours, is directing that program. As a result, the University of Wisconsin is doing outstanding research involving Black and Native American communities. And where the Black community is concerned is because Dr. Fabu Carter has been doing great outreach work. She's going to be here in the studios in an upcoming episode or so, just to talk about her role in engaging the Black community in some of these studies. But, again, pay attention to what's going on. Don't just pretend like it's not happening. Get some assessment, get involved, get the doctors involved, be proactive, because this was a 14-year journey. But I didn't think about having to take care of Mom for 14 years. I think about having her for 14 years, which is much better than not getting her care, and then it's only a 4 or 5 year journey. And so, but if you're in the throes of it, and you're facing the truth of this, make memories. We have so much footage, these videos of Mom that we want to put together. We look at and we laugh, and we're thinking, how could someone be this funny while deep in the throes of Alzheimer's and dementia? But she still had her sense of humor. She still had that wit. And we got her out of her place and took her for drives and brought her over for holidays and took her food. So make memories, and don't let a diagnosis be all that you see and think about with your loved one. Again, I just want to stress that this is a growing concern. Alzheimer's is a growing concern for our nation's healthcare system. And like so many other diseases, it's having an impact on the Black community at an alarming, growing rate. And a lot of it's due to stress. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to bring this up with Dr. Carter when she's on the show. But one of the things that we said at our mom's memorial service was that she was born in 1939, which means she lived through the Depression. She was a grandchild of a slave. But she lived through segregation, was adult when all the integration started in schools, lived through civil rights, afraid to bring a Black male into this world 72 days after the March on Washington. Like, the stress of Black mothers bringing children into the world in the 50s and the 60s was just horrendous. And then to watch them, the assassinations of JFK, RFK, MLK, Malcolm X, I think all of that stress, all that she endured, but still having to be strong enough for integration, worrying about her children. I personally think that it's why we're seeing such a rise in our elders, because of what they have experienced. No other Black resident since we first got here in the 1600s have experienced that same arc of development, arc of social change in our country. They have witnessed and endured a lot. And so I'm beginning to understand it and think about it much, much differently. But as you see people going through it, just know that there are things that you can do to be helpful. What I want to bring up when my guests come on next time is, what can we do to slow the growth of this or the likelihood of developing it? And there are things, again, there's no cure for Alzheimer's, but there are things that medical science is saying, and scientists are saying, we can do. It has to do with exercise and avoiding stress and playing chess and cards and puzzle books and cryptograms, which are things my mom did for years, which is why I think we had her around for so long. But we also want to talk about things that you can do for those of you in your 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s that you should be doing in order to really promote brain health. But particularly for us in the Black community, because we have an extra layer of racial stress that is really exacerbating the rise of these degenerative diseases in our community. Whew, okay, that's about all I can take for today. But listen, we're going to put a link in this particular episode and the upcoming episodes about where you can go to get information about Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's research. And certainly you can narrow it down to the area that you live in. You know someone whose caregivers or friends or loved ones need to understand this better. Please share this episode with them. As I ask you each time, write a review of this podcast and what it means to you. Take a moment and subscribe so that you get notified every time I drop a new blog or a new episode. You can click the Patreon link so that you can become one of the folks that supports this podcast in a special way, and you get access to special things, behind the scenes things, updates, insights. But most importantly, just share the information out and let people know that you're listening to this and it's enhancing your quality of life. Thank you for being our listeners and for being supportive of Black Like Me podcast. It really means a lot to me, and I appreciate having a place where I can come and process things like I have today with my sister, and that helps me to live in a more healthy manner. So have a great day, and thank you so much for making Black Like Me podcast a part of your day. Take care.
Black like me. Black like me.
I want to thank you for taking time to listen to this episode of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G. You know, when I first imagined doing this podcast, I thought about myself with my iPhone sitting in a room in my house, just sort of doing this all on my own. But you know what? The reason why we've won awards and the reason why we have over 200 episodes up is because I have a brilliant team who helps me to make this podcast what it is. So let me take a moment and thank Jeremy and Eli, who are my editors and producers extraordinaire, Jakisha, who handles marketing. If you like that opening track of our theme song, you can show your appreciation to Corey Saffold, who created that and produced it, and Marcus Fleming, my cousin, who's on vocals. I also want to say that this podcast was started with the generous support of the Human Family Unity Foundation, and so we always want to stop and thank them for that. For the many patrons who support us through our Patreon page, thank you, thank you, thank you. You don't just listen, but you support, you lean in, and you help this podcast to be what it is. And then I need to thank you, the listeners, who make a point of downloading this, listening to it, and sharing it. Without all of you, this podcast would not be what it is and what it's becoming. Thank you so much.
Black like me.